Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Headline Books Christmas Extravaganza session. This evening, we have some very special guests with us today. We have Dreama Denver, who is a Headline Books author, and we also have Burke Allen, who will be serving as our guest interviewer today from Allen Media Strategies. If you guys have any questions for Dreama, go ahead and type them into the comments section underneath this video, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Also, if you are interested in buying any of the books that we discussed tonight, there will also be links here in the comments for that as well. So again, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Dreama and Burke. Thank you both so much for being with us this evening. We're so glad you're here.
Thanks, Ashley. And hi, everybody. Dreama Denver was married for almost 3 decades to one of television's most recognized men, Bob Denver. He was Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. He was also on Dobie Gillis before that, one of the rare birds who had 2 huge hit TV series. And Dreama has written a book about their life together, Gilligan's Dreams, and has a new updated version, a second edition of Gilligan's Dreams by the request of the publishers at Headline Books. And we're going to talk with Dreama about the new second edition of Gilligan's Dreams, The Other Side of the Island. Welcome, my pal, Dreama Denver. Hello there.
Hi, Burke. It is a good day for me. Any day I get to hang out with you. So, and Kathy and Ashley and everybody at Headline. So it's good to be here.
We're looking at the cover of the second edition of Gilligan's Dreams. Tell me about that picture of you and your late husband, Bob Denver. Do you remember where that was taken?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. When people see that photo, they always love it because of the way we're looking at each other. And that pretty much sums up how we were together. But that was taken on the dance floor of the Love Boat.
Really?
Yeah. And there was that, you can see the studio lights back behind Bob's head. And they were doing one of the discotheque scenes, and I was dancing with Bob in the scene. And so one of the studio photographers came by and he said, hey guys, let's get some pictures. And I have a whole, what do they call, like a proof sheet of all kinds of 2 shots taken at that time. And that was always my favorite and Bob's favorite. So I thought it would make a great cover of the book. I love the cover of the book. Do you like it?
I think it's fantastic. I love the sort of retro font. And since it's a second edition, we should talk about what's different in this version of Gilligan's Dreams and in the first version. So for folks who aren't familiar with Gilligan's Dreams, Dreams is the nickname that Bob gave you. And so that's what you named the book. The first edition of the book was written when, and what's different in the new one?
The first edition was written about 8 years ago. Well, probably written 9 or 10 years ago. It took a while to write it. It was a very difficult process to go through, just to relive all of that. But it was written about 9 or 10 years ago, published 8 years ago. And what was really amazing and what is a real gift, I think, is the fact that fans were able to come up to me, people who had read the book, and say, oh, I love this part. I love that part. I wish you had had more of whatever it was they wanted more of. Now, at the very early part of the book, I mentioned the fact that I was an actress before. That's how I met Bob. And I mentioned the fact that I had worked with Academy Award winner or Academy Award nominee, Sal Mineo. I had worked with Gail Gordon, Mr. Mooney on The Lucy Show. I had worked with, ladies, hang on. I had worked with Doug McClure, who played Trampas on The Virginian. And okay. I just mentioned that I had done those things. And so people wanted to hear more about that. So that is, that's part of the rewrite. Part of the revision is to tell stories about some of my favorite celebrities that I worked with before I worked with Bob. And then the epilogue, I think the biggest change would be in the epilogue, because so much has happened in the 9 years since I originally wrote the book. And the epilogue, the honor, Always Free Honor Flight, and all the things that I have done since the book came out were really wonderful things to, I think, pay tribute to our veterans and all of that in the epilogue of of the new second edition of Gilligan's Dreams. So it was just really, it was kind of going with what fans wanted, what they kept telling me they wish they had seen more of. And so I just decided, okay, let's add some of that. And you wouldn't believe how amazing that is when you really sit down and start thinking, okay, who did I meet when I was in Hollywood? You know, you wouldn't believe what you remember that you had totally forgotten. Some of it kind of surprised me, and it was about going through pictures and finding pictures that, you know, showed us with somebody that I had forgotten we ever met. It's hard to believe that's true, but it really is true. So a lot of that is in the new version of the book.
Hey, if you're just scrolling by your social media feed and you're wondering, who is this beautiful lady standing next to the guy who played Gilligan? That's our guest on our Headline Books Christmas Extravaganza, Dreama Denver. We could call her Mrs. Gilligan. She's talking about her new book, Gilligan's Dreams. It's the second edition of Gilligan's Dreams. And if you'd like an autographed copy, the books are available now at headlinebooks.com. That's headlinebooks.com. And Dreama, as you mentioned, you were an accomplished actress before you ever met Bob. And I love the story of you guys being, cast opposite one another in a play. On the screen right now, there's some different plays that you guys did together. Sort of take me through that time when the two of you appeared together on stage and in television. The photo on the left, tell me about that show.
Well, let me start with the photo on the right, if that's okay with you. That was our first show together. I was cast in a show called Play It Again.
From that picture, that's the very first time you guys were in a play
That was
together.
dress rehearsal of the very first show we did together, where I'm wearing the white skirt and Bob has his arms crossed. It was the Woody Allen play, Play It Again, Sam. And Bob had done, people don't know this, Bob had been Woody Allen's hand-picked replacement for Play It Again, Sam on Broadway. When Woody left the show, I think he did it for like a year, and then Bob came in and did it for like a year. And then after Bob did it in New York, he took it on the road. And that's where he and I came together. And it was really interesting. I happened to be in Florida visiting my family, and a friend called me and said, you know, you need to go over to this theater and audition for Play It Again, Sam, because you would be perfect for the part. So I went, oh, okay. So I did. And I went over and auditioned. I got the part. And I was talking to the producer and I said, so who's going to be starring? And she said, Bob Denver. And I went, Gilligan? And she said, yes. And I went, seriously, I'm going to have to kiss and do love scenes with Gilligan? Really? And she said, well, yeah, if you want the part, you're going to have to do that. And I was like, oh, I want the part. Little did I know, what it would all lead to. But that was sort of how we came together. That's the picture on the right. Picture on the left was our favorite show, a two-person show called The Owl and the Pussycat, where yours truly got to play a hooker, very against type, because I was always the sweet young ingenue. And I got to play the hooker with a heart of gold. And we did that show. We had a trunk with all of the props, and a prop that sticks out for me is a mask that Bob had to wear. We had all these things in a trunk. And a producer could call us and say, we need somebody I remember Mickey Rooney was doing a show in Arizona and he got sick and couldn't continue. And we were in Hawaii, and they called us and said, could you come and do this show and replace Mickey Rooney? And we said, sure. So we just took our trunk off. We went, and we were able to just put the show on its feet in a moment's notice and do The Owl and the Pussycat. So that's what that picture is from. And then the middle photo is a pilot for a TV series that Bob and I did together called Scamps. It was Bob and myself, Dina Dietrich, who played Mother Nature. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. She was in it. And 9 children. They were the Scamps. And the ringleader of the group was Joey Lawrence. If you guys remember Joey Lawrence from, he was in Give Me a Break with Nell Carter, and he was on Blossom for years and years and years. And so he was 5 3/4 years old when we did that show together. And he and I, we just fell in love with each other. Bob was fine with that one. the 5 3/4, that was good. And so Joey and I just had this great little, oh, he was so cute. He's, you know, part of the reason Colin is in this world. I was like, I want to have a baby as cute as that one. So yeah, that's what those 3 pictures were.
And there are lots of photos of Dreama and Bob and their life in showbiz and their family life in Gilligan's Dreams. And comments are already coming in from all over the country. Dreama, so happy for you and your book. Can't wait to read it. I'm getting mine signed. I love those pictures, Dreama. So thanks. If you have comments or questions for Dreama Denver, send them in to us. When you work with 9 kids like that, were you guys worried about being, you know, upstaged by these kids? They say never work with kids and animals. Was that a concern for you?
It's hard not to be upstaged by 9 adorable kids. It was, I just remember I would be, because Bob was in every scene with the kids. And I remember, you know, I was not in every scene. So I'd be sitting off to the side and I would hear, take 32. I'd be like, okay, because Bob was a take 1 kind of a guy, you know. So that was interesting. And I remember there was a little boy in the show who, you know, they were just kids. They were between the ages of 5 and 9. So, you know, the attention span was about that big. And I remember one little boy, he just couldn't settle down and he couldn't, you know, he wouldn't hit his marks and he didn't know his lines. And so Sherwood Schwartz, who produced the show, the kindest man in all the world, just a wonderful, prolific Hollywood producer, as you know. Sherwood took, this little boy's name was Damon, as I remember, and Sherwood took him to his office and he had it's so funny. He had a big map on the table, and the map was of the neighborhood that Oliver, Bob's character, lived in. What the premise of the show was that these 9 children all lived in the neighborhood, and it was back during the days of latchkey kids. Remember, that was a really big deal, like in the early 80s, that, you know, kids would come home and have to stay by themselves while their parents worked. And so Bob was a writer, his character was a writer, and he was home all the time. And so he took all the neighborhood kids in. And so Sherwood sat the little boy down and he said, okay, you see the neighborhood? And the kid said, yes, sir. And he said, you see Oliver's house right here? That was Bob's character. And the little boy said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, do you see your house right here where you live in the neighborhood? And the little boy went, yes, sir. And he said, if you don't start hitting your mark, you're going to have to move all the way from here way over here to the other side of town. And you won't be able to. And the kid was like, oh, yes, sir. Okay. And that really, he did it in the kindest, sweetest, funniest way. And the kids responded to that. You know, he was wonderful. And Bob was wonderful with children. So, but there would sometimes be 32 takes. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Oh, Scamps. And if you are in a Googling mood, you can Google and find the trailer for Scamps still out there on the internet. And you can also find a clip of a little 5.5-year-old Joey Larson show where he waxes poetic about his love for Dreama Denver, which kills me every time I see it.
Oh, that is so dear to my heart. It was so cute. We knew he was going to be on. He went on when we were filming Scamps and did it to promote the show, you know. So he went on, he was sitting there with Carson, and Johnny says, so now what is your favorite thing about filming Scamps? And Joey goes, Dreama Denver. Well, Johnny Carson didn't know what that was. He was like, okay. And he went, yeah, Dreama Denver gives me skyrockets. 5 3/4 years old. I was like, that was just so amazing to me. He was so darling. He did a video for me. A good friend of mine in California, Doug Hartline, hooked up with Joey at an autograph show back before we all got locked down and couldn't do these things anymore. And Joey did a video for me talking about Bob and I took him to Hamburger Hamlet, and, you know, we took him to the movies to see, oh gosh, what was it? A Disney movie, the one, oh, I can't think, but he remembered all those things from when he was 5 years old. And he remembered he had a crush on me. And it was just, and had the show been picked up, Sherwood had already written a script where Mandy, my character, and Joey, they kept his name for his character, where Mandy and Joey would have a pretend wedding in Oliver's backyard because they were so crazy about each other. And we never got to do that one. I wish we had. It would have been fun.
Oh, great. Dreama Denver is talking about her new book, Gilligan's Dreams, The Other Side of the Island, and her magical life in show business early on with Bob Denver, their family life together. If you have questions or comments for Dreama, be sure to send them in. And if you'd like an autographed copy of Gilligan's Dreams just in time for the holidays, it's a great read. I've read it. I think you'll love it. Go to headlinebooks.com. Let me ask you a couple of questions. Here's one from Keith. Who is your biggest influence as a writer and also your biggest influence as an actor?
Wow.
Good
Well,
question.
as an actor, in my you may not believe this now, but in my young acting days, when I would get reviewed, I was often compared, and I love this, to Goldie Hawn. So I think probably in my acting days, she was one that I was proud to be compared to, and certainly wouldn't mind being accused of emulating. She was pretty amazing. I loved comedy, you know, and so she was a genius at it. So that would be the actress, I guess. And
Well, what about writing? Now that you're a writer, you've got an award-winning children's book too, Four Bears in a Box, which is also great. And you've written now in your second edition of Gilligan's Dreams. Was there a certain writer that you loved to read or that you wanted to look up to or emulate or take things from?
You know, for Gilligan's Dreams, which was my first endeavor,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not doing this to butter him up, but the truth of the matter is it was Homer Hickam, New York Times bestselling author. I had read all three of his memoirs, and there's something about Homer has such a terrific, he's a friend of ours, both of us, so you know what I'm talking about. He's got this amazing sense of humor, and I love the way he writes. He draws you into the story and makes you feel like I might be a girl, but I felt like I was a rocket boy, you know? And I just thought, wow, if I could make my memoir half as good as the things that Homer has written, I will be doing myself a great service. So what happened is that Homer actually became my first reader. He is the one who, after we met, he encouraged me to write a book. You know, Bob had always said to me, always, Bob was older than I was by about 15 years. So we assumed that it would happen the way it did, that he would be the first to go. And he always said to me, you know, when I'm not here anymore, I think you're a great writer. If you want to write a book, write it. But when you do, be real with it. Don't sugarcoat it. Make it real and tell it like it was. And so that's what I did in this book. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly's not that ugly, but I know when I was writing about the biggest fight that Bob and I ever had, I thought, I cannot believe I'm writing this for people to read about it. I can't believe I'm doing that, but I did. And I just did what Bob told me to do. So Homer and I had spoken about that, and he said, you know, I really think you should do it. So I did. And, you know, it's interesting when you write a memoir, you always hear the words, you have to relive it. And that's true. But the reality of reliving it is, it's a gut punch in so many ways, because you really have to go back and smell it and taste it and feel it and know that that you just have to relive every moment, everything about it, and you have to get lost in it. And that's hard to do. So Homer and I, he always had the Rocket Boys Festival, and I had started writing the beginning of the memoir, and, you know, writing about us falling in love and meeting, and all the early part of our marriage was bittersweet, but it was lovely. And then I got to the hard parts, and it was difficult. It took me probably 3 years to write this book, because I would go, I can't go there. I just can't do it. And Homer would encourage me to, you know, to go there. And his advice, and this is great advice, I think, for any writer. His advice was for me to treat it like a job, turn off my phone, turn off the television, sit down with my computer, treat it like a job, set aside so much time every day to do the writing, however much time felt comfortable to me. And so that's what I ended up doing. And I would write, when I got to the hard parts of the book, I would write a chapter. And there were times I had to take a break for 5-6 days. It just knocked the breath out of me. I just couldn't keep going. So it took a little bit longer than it would have had I could have just gone right through it. But I did have to take breaks now and then. And Homer was really an inspiration for me. And I love him dearly. I mean, I'm so grateful to him for kind of cheerleading me through the process. He was pretty amazing. And if people haven't read his books, Rocket Boys and Sky of Stone and The Colwood Way, those are his 3 memoirs. I can't recommend them more highly. They are awesome.
It's obvious as we look at these pictures of you and Bob, even though they're staged pictures from plays that you appeared in, you can just see the way you look at that guy. It was a real love story. Dreama,
the love of my life, for sure.
How long after Bob passed away did you start writing Gilligan's Dreams? How much time did it had to go by before you could wrap your arms around doing something like that?
It was probably a couple of years before a year and a half at the very least, but probably a couple of years. And then again, I was going to say at the Rocket Boys Festival, I saw Homer one year. He said, "How's the book going?" I said, I'm having, it's a struggle. I'm having a hard time getting to the hard parts. And then I saw him again a year later at the Rocket Boys Festival. And he's like, "So how's it going?" And I'm like, I hadn't done anything in that year. So I probably started a year and a half or 2 after Bob died. And then it took time. I mean, it took me about 3 years to get through the hard stuff. Our son's diagnosis and Bob's diagnosis and just all the things that we went through. It was hard to do. And once the book came out, initially, I never read it again until I sat down to make revisions and add to the existing book for headline books. And I had not read it in all those years. It's really difficult. And even doing the revisions, I had to read through all of it again, relive it again. And that's a tough thing to do. So now I'm so happy because it's done and everybody else can read it. And that'll be lovely to know that other people are reading it and hopefully getting inspiration from it, because that's part of the reason I wrote it. There were two reasons, I guess. One, I wanted fans to know Bob as a man, not Gilligan or Maynard or any of the characters he played, but as the wonderful father he was to our autistic son and the wonderful husband he was to me. I wanted people to know that part of him. And I just wanted to, there are a lot of touchstones in my story. I can empathize and identify with a lot of people in a lot of situations because I've been in quite a few valleys. And I wanted it to be inspirational to people who, might have a child diagnosed with something or the loss of a spouse. I know when Bob passed away, I remember going on Amazon trying to find any book that would tell me how to survive losing him, because I'm not being dramatic. I did not think I could. So, so I wanted to write that kind of book that somebody going through that kind of thing could pick up my book and find out that you can survive it even when you think you can't.
There's a whole series of chapters in the book that deal with your son and as you mentioned, his diagnosis with autism. But one of the questions that we had is it true that Bob essentially walked away from his Hollywood career to help you raise your son, Colin?
He did. And it was never discussed. It was just like a given. We had Colin. Colin was diagnosed when he was 2 years old. And he had to have full-time care. He still is nonverbal. So now I can't even believe I'm saying this, but he is now 36 years old. And I've never had a conversation with my son. Try to imagine that. Can you imagine that? Having a child that age and you've never, heard him talk about his hopes or his dreams or any of those things. And he had to have 24-hour daycare. We brought him into this world. We loved him like nobody's business. We were committed, and it was just a given. That was what we would do. And we did that for going on 21 years when Bob passed away. I mean, to the exclusion of everything else. 24/7, 365, we did full-time care with our son, and it was not easy, and you can read all about it, but that's what I wanted people to know about Bob, how much he loved me and how much he loved Colin, and you know, how Hollywood took a back seat to any and everything that had to do with Colin or me. And that doesn't mean he didn't go out and do personal appearances or guest starring roles on shows like Alf and Baywatch and shows that were big then, but primarily he was home with us because one person could not do it alone. And I was how blessed was I? Because there are men who, wouldn't step up that way. And I was just blessed beyond belief to have a man who did.
What a great love story. And you can read it all in Gilligan's Dreams, the second edition, with my friend Dreama Denver, our guest on tonight's Headline Books Christmas Extravaganza. It's a great read. It's a page turner. And if you emulated Homer Hickam, you picked up some great lessons. We've got some questions. I want to burn through these and make sure we get to as many as we can. Was there any truth to the rumor that Bob wanted to build an amusement park in West Virginia when you guys settled there?
Yes, big truth to that rumor. Not an amusement park, but he wanted to do a Bob Denver's putt-putt. He had it designed. We had the render. I probably still have the rendering somewhere. I'd have to go hunt them down, but he had it designed. He wanted, in honor of our son, he wanted the putt-putt to be staffed by special needs people, giving out the equipment and the balls and the clubs and all those things. He wanted, I know the 18th hole was going to be a volcano. And if you made a hole in one, the volcano was going to go off. I mean, he had all these really, really wonderful plans. And he wanted, he loved it here. He might have been an adopted West Virginian, but he would wake up every morning. I mean, the first 5 or 6 years we were here every morning and walk to the window, look at the mountains and say, honey, thank you for being born here, as if I had anything to do with that. He loved West Virginia, and he wanted really badly to do something for my hometown. He wanted to, he just wanted to do something to, I don't want to say put it on the map, but he just wanted to do something really special for my hometown of Bluefield. And in both of our heads, that included Princeton, because we just never had that differentiation thing. It was just like, it was all sort of a nice bit. He wanted it to be called actually Blueprints, West Virginia. And I was like, okay, talk him into that one, honey. I want to see that one. But he really wanted to do something. He looked at the Colonial Theater. For anybody who lives in this area, the Colonial Theater was an Art Deco, beautiful movie theater, stage theater, back in the day. And he went and looked at that before it actually fell in, and wanted, his desire also was to refurbish that and to make it a happening place again, where people could get on a train and come up from Roanoke and see shows and all of that. He really wanted to do something for this area. And yes, the Bob Denver putt-putt was one of those things. There are renderings and everything somewhere for that. Yes.
Here's a question from Bruce. And Bruce says that on bobdenver.com, in the Gilligan's Island movies, there's lots of information there. The first movie, Rescue from Gilligan's Island, was originally aired on TV in 2 parts. The second movie, The Castaways on Gilligan's Island, was not aired in 2 parts. But what I think is most interesting is the third movie had Dreama Denver as a co-star. You got to hang out with the Castaways and the Harlem Globetrotters. How great is that?
Can you believe that? And this is not meant to be disrespectful to the existing Globetrotters, but I'm telling you what, that was the days of Geese and Meadowlark and, you know, all of those guys. Here are some pictures. Me with Jimmy Blacklock. I am on my tippy toes and barely come up to his shoulder. And then the picture on the left was the castaways on Gilligan's Island. The rescue aired all in one. It was the castaways that they divided into. They divided an hour one week and an hour the next week. Okay. And then the third one that I was in, Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island, I think that all aired at the same time because they saw the error of their ways when they split the show up the second go round. They were like, no, we can't do that. The original rescue got something like, now I may not have this number exactly right, but I think I'm close, something like a 57 or a 58 share, which is unheard of. Unheard of. It was the highest rated TV movie at that time. Now MASH outdid it later, and the finale of MASH and all that. But as far as TV movies go, it was huge, The Rescue from Gilligan's Island.
I noticed a different Ginger there.
That's Judy Baldwin. In the first two movies, Tina did not want to reprise her role. She had sort of struck out and was trying to, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Tina was on Dallas, the first season of Dallas. She played JR's secretary, I think it was, and she had struck out and was doing other things and didn't want to go revisit all of that again. And the thing, I write about this a teeny bit in the book, but the thing that just blew Bob away, she got more press for not doing the movie than she would have had she done the movie. Everybody, the big thing was that Tina wasn't coming back. Everybody else did, but she didn't. So for the first two, Judy Baldwin played Ginger and did a lovely job. And, you have to admire that because you're coming into a cast of people who've known each other forever, going back because it was 15 years before the rescue movie. So, they had known each other a long time. You're coming into this kind of cohesive unit and you're new, but they nicest cast in the world. So they were wonderful to her. And then in the third movie, the one that I did, Constance Forsland played Ginger, and she was just amazing. And working with the Globetrotters, that's Bob and me. That's I played Lucinda. She was 7, and she was Mrs. Howell's social secretary. And you could not get in to see the Howells without getting past me first. So that was kind of fun. And the other thing about that, the third movie, the entire script had been written around Jim Backus. And Jim ended up not being well for that particular shoot. So the script could not be rewritten. There was already a start date on the movie for filming and all of that. So they brought in this wonderful young actor. A lot of you will remember him from Supermarket Sweep. His name is David Ruprecht. And David came in, and believe it or not, out of nowhere, there was a Thurston Owl the fourth. And David did the most amazing job emulating Jim. The jaw. No, I can't do it. But that whole Thurston Howell thing that Jim did. And David was amazing. Now, the cool thing that means so much to me, it was just such an amazing thing for me to be able to do. Jim came in at the end of the shoot and shot one scene. He was very ill. He had to be sort of, walked in and brought in. And I got to do that scene with him. I got to stand next to him, and he talked to my character. And that was the last thing that Jim Backus ever put on film. So that was pretty spectacular. And to be part of that was amazing. But when he left at the end of the tiny little scene that he did, I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. He got a standing ovation. The crew was crying. The cast was crying. It was pretty amazing stuff.
What an incredible,
and I got to be part of that. How amazing is that?
So I'm going to ask you what may come across as a very cold and callous question, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Okay. Here you are in a Gilligan's Island movie, and you get a co-starring role in Scamps, and you're cast opposite Bob in all these dinner theater plays. Were there lots of folks who said, "Oh, she's just getting those roles because she's married to Bob Denver"? Did you run into any of that stuff? Because clearly, as we talked about earlier, you were an accomplished actress before this, but was that kind of whispering happening?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember when we were working on stage, Bob he would get a job, he'd get offered the part, and he would say, "Yes, I'll do it as long as my girlfriend at the beginning and then my wife can do it with me." And they would agree, but it was all, I could always feel I hope she can act. I hope she can string 3 words together. It was always kind of that feeling I got until we got in rehearsals. And every time we started, when rehearsal started and we started doing our thing, and they saw that I actually could act and that I wasn't just along for the ride, that went away right away. On stage, that was never a problem. When it came to the Gilligan movie, and I write about this in the book, now I'm sure having Bob, the star of the show, as a husband didn't hurt anything, but they didn't just give me anything. I had to go to the Suits at NBC, and I had to go up to the office, and I had to audition. And I remember Bob and Sherwood were with me, and I read the scene, whatever it was he wanted me to do. Again, I think it was just making sure that I could speak and read a line or whatever. But I think at the end of it, I think NBC was perfectly fine with the fact that I'd gotten the part and I got to do it. But sure, I ran into some of that, and on stage, it never bothered me because that was sort of my forte. That was where I had all my experience and felt comfortable and knew, what I was doing. And film was a little bit different. I didn't do as much as that, certainly as Bob did or had done. And so that was a little different. I totally understood that they would want to, see me and talk to me and see what I was like and what the part was and could I do it. So yeah, I ran into it, but it was okay. Listen, I was chopped liver so many times. We were doing, Bob would be doing a personal appearance and I would be with him, and women would just shove me out of the way to get to him. And it would be like, what am I, chopped liver? Yeah, pretty much. People didn't see you. And I learned to just kind of roll with that too, because he was the draw, and he was what they came to see and the autograph they wanted to get. So I never had a problem with second billing. Do you know what I mean? There was never competition that way. I was so happy just acting and doing what I loved and being in love with the person I was doing it with and traveling the country and Canada and with him and being able to make a living doing something that was like play time. Other actors don't get mad at me for saying that, but it's not digging ditches. It's really a fun thing to create characters and pretend, and so I loved everything about it. Being second banana was not a problem for me ever.
Dreama Denver, our guest on the Headline Books Holiday Extravaganza. Her new second edition of Gilligan's Dreams is available now at headlinebooks.com, along with her award-winning children's book, Four Bears in a Box. And you may have been, second banana then, your first banana to an awful lot of people now. Let me read just a couple of these comments. Here's a, "Hey, love you," from Paul. "Hello, Dreama," from Charlie Belcher. Christina says, "It's a wonderful book." Tina Cook, "Dreama, you're the best. Love," from Beckley, West Virginia. And here's a note: Four Bears in a Box just won runners-up for Best Children's Book at the Paris Book Festival. So congratulations there. And here's a really sweet comment, Dreama. This is from a lady named Nancy, who says, "I followed Dreama when she was promoting her very first book. It was so good to see all the response from her friends and fans. And now international love, or I guess with the Paris Book Festival. This book helped me when my husband passed away. It's really a great love story. Thanks," from Nancy. So lots of
Nancy. Thanks to everybody. That's, hearing that makes me feel so good, because that's what I wanted the book to do. I wrote it to hopefully be inspirational and give some kind of comfort, because I know how hard I was looking for that after Bob passed away. And if my book did that for Nancy, thank you. And thank you for letting me know that, because that means so much to me. And I'm just grateful that I love headline books. Kathy and Ashley and Patty, I love all of them so much. And I'm so grateful that they wanted to do a second edition of this book, to give me a chance to add things that fans wanted, and to update the epilogue about some really wonderful things that have happened in the intervening 8 years. And, you know, to have this book out there again just means the world to me. And I so hope that people, you know, find out that it's there, and that people give it a read, because I really think they'll find it. I've had people tell me it was life-changing, and that's a big statement, but I've had more than one person tell me that. So, you know, if it can do that for anybody, that just fills me up and makes me really, really happy and glad, really glad that I wrote it.
Well, and the comments from folks who read the first edition are just pouring in. Lisa says, "You're truly inspirational, Dreama. Thanks for sharing your story." Holly says, "What an amazing human being to write the painful parts to help others with their painful parts." Here's a question from one of Bob's fans, Keith. And he wants to know if after Bob's passing, did you ever see him again in your dreams? And if so, could you share just one of those dreams with his fans? Love the book. Look forward to reading the second edition. Did you ever dream about your husband after he passed?
You know, it was a while before I did. And it was interesting because, well, this is something I've never talked about. So thank you for that question, because I've never been asked. I prayed nightly to dream about him. I mean, I prayed that he would come to me in my dreams, and he didn't for a long time. I don't remember how long exactly, but let's say maybe 6 months. Kind of guessing there. But one night it was, I was asleep, obviously, and dreaming, and he was sitting on a sofa, and he kind of motioned me over, and I went and sat down beside him, and he put his arm around me and he cuddled me up. And you have to understand, our son, Colin, who was probably 20, 21 at this point, at this time, he lived upstairs in the house. And so I woke up to crying often. And I was right in the middle of this dream, and honestly felt like I was with Bob. It felt so good. And suddenly there was screaming and yelling, and it woke me up, and I went, back to reality. So, but I did that one time, and I have a couple of times, not every night, not nearly as much as I wish, but I have dreamt of him a couple of times, and pray still. 15 years later, I still pray to see him in my dreams, because sometimes that feels very, very real. And I think sometimes it is kind of real. I had something odd happen the other night. Now, this is, you know, people can laugh at this if they want to, but the other night, a couple of nights ago, I went to bed, and I have one of those, oh gosh, what are those lamps that are supposed to, oh gosh,
Like
what are they called? Yeah, salt lamps. Salt lamps, I think is what they are. They're like salt lamps. They're supposed to, you know, put off good something in your household and take away the bad stuff. I don't know. I have one of those in the bedroom, and I had it turned off forever. And literally, I was sitting there a couple of nights ago. I looked up, and that light, I'm not kidding, from an off position, turned on. And I actually said, "Honey, is that you?" Because it just came on. I hadn't touched it. I wasn't near it. There was no reason for it to pop on like that. So I still look for those things. Yeah.
Do you ever catch shows on TV or movies that Bob is in? And when you do happen to see him unexpectedly, do you stop and watch?
You know, it's really interesting. When I first met Bob, when we first got together, I remember we were sitting in the Star apartment when we did Play It Again, Sam. And it was before the theater, before we were leaving to go to the theater. And Gilligan's Island was on. That was back in the days when it was on every day after school and everybody ran home and all of that. And Gilligan's Island was on. And I remember looking up at the TV and then looking over at Bob and back at the TV thinking, well, they look alike. I mean, Bob was so different than Gilligan. He was very intellectual, incredibly well-read. He read, and I'm not kidding, 5 books a week. He read books like bam, 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 bam. So Gilligan, the innocent Gilligan, the nebbish, the always messing up guy was nothing like Bob. So when I see him on TV, it would be seeing like a home video would be more emotional, I think, for me than to see him as Gilligan or a character on television. And I haven't seen that in a while. I don't even know when it's on anymore. Is it still on? Do we know?
It's on
Okay.
MeTV, and occasionally you just run across his stuff online. It's all online now. Dreama Denver, by the way, is our guest. If you happen to be scrolling through your social media feed and you wonder who this pretty lady is with great stories, that is the author of Gilligan's Dreams. The brand new 2nd edition is available now. It's all part of the Headline Books Christmas Extravaganza, and the book is available now, autographed at headlinebooks.com. Hey, the pictures that are up on the screen now, I'll talk about the one on the left in a second, but I have to share something that happened to me just today
Okay.
that reminds me of this picture on the right. So I had a dentist appointment earlier today, and I'm making small talk with a dentist, and I said, you know, if you're going to numb my mouth, it has to be okay, because this evening I'm going to do a video conversation with my friend Dreama Denver, and he said, who's that? And I said, well, she was married to Bob Denver for a very long time. And he said, yes, I remember when he came here in concert and he sang in the round. And I said, no, that's John Denver.
Right.
Dreama was married to Bob Denver, but you have an amazing connection also to John Denver. And there's a photo of you in the West Virginia Capitol Rotunda. Tell everyone about that picture.
That is, and I was actually talking to Bob. Whoever snapped that picture got it when I looked up and said, honey, can you believe this? So that picture is very, very special to me. Confusing to a lot of people because they would come to bobdenver.com and see John Denver on the homepage, you know, because that picture was there when it happened. But well, I have a radio station, a nonprofit radio station called Little Buddy Radio. And I had a morning show at one time called Sunny Side Up. And I played Country Road or Take Me Home Country Roads one morning, and somebody called in wanting to know if that was a West Virginia state song. And I said, I don't think it is. Got off the air, checked to make sure, even though it was used like a state song, it wasn't officially a state song. And so I thought, you know, that's a no-brainer. And that it's got to be a state song. The state song prior to that was, Oh, the West Virginia Hills, that I grew up singing as a kid. You know, it had been like 50 years or something since they had, you know, changed the state song. They used it like one. Anyway, it became a mission. I had my listeners writing letters and sending emails and calling our legislators up in Charleston, and we needed to make this happen. And I tried it in 2013, and it passed the House, but did not pass the Senate that year. So I was like, okay, failure is not an option. we can't fail at this. So I started doing every interview that I could with newspapers and television and radio stations, and kept my listeners, you know, energized and calling Charleston. And then the last thing I did, it passed the House in 2014. And the last thing I did, I said, okay, the Senate not passing it, it just isn't an option. So I wrote every senator a letter describing what I'm going to tell you now, which is when people found out that I was leading the effort, they started writing me and calling me and Facebooking me and messaging me to tell me all the places in the world that Country Roads had been sung to them. And apparently every pub in Ireland does this song. I've even had people send me videos from pubs in Ireland. The Great Wall of China, I have friends who heard it there. The United Arab Emirates, people from there were letting me know. Mongolia, I mean, just, it's been sung to people from West Virginia everywhere around the world. So I wrote a letter to every senator telling them that, and all the stories that were coming to me via West Virginia citizens, and it passed. But the weird thing was, I was sitting home one day and I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. And I usually don't answer those, but something told me to answer it. And I said hello, and a voice goes, I'd like to speak to Dreama Denver. And I said, speaking. And he goes, Dreama, this is Governor Tomlin. And I was like, oh, whoa. And what he said to me, he said, it's going to pass on Friday. We're going to have the vote in the Senate. Bring anybody you want and come to Charleston. We want you on the Senate floor when this passes, the resolution. So you were there, Burke, and my team, Pam Colbert and Steve Coleman and Paul Dorsey and Marie Blackwell. I took them all with me, or we met up there, and we were all there when it passed unanimously, which was just amazing. And then this speech that I gave was in the rotunda of the Capitol, and they had the West Virginia Children's Choir. Is that what it was, Burke?
Yeah. Yep.
They're singing the song. It was just amazing. And Major General Hoyer was there, and the governor was there, and it was an amazing day. And I have to tell you, it was one of those moments when they called me to the front of the Senate. You remember when we walked up there? I literally wanted to sit down on the floor and bawl like a baby, because I just couldn't believe it was real and it was happening. And as always, I was like, honey, can you believe this? And that's what I said it out loud there. I was like, honey, can you believe this is happening? It was just an amazing thing. I know Bob would have been very, very proud. And you, I think you were responsible for having gotten statements from John Denver's children, one of whom was in Australia, right?
I think so,
At the
yeah.
time, as I remember. They all sent statements about how proud their dad would be. But I have to say, and I have to say this on behalf of the Denver children, Denver is not John Denver's real last name.
Stage name.
Yeah, it was, well, he changed it to Denver because of his love for Colorado. But his actual last name was John Deutschendorf. That was his real last name. And it was very funny because when Bob's oldest daughter was little, it just made her crazy that he had stolen the family name. It was very, very cute. So on behalf of the Denver kids, I have to just say that.
Well, I have to tell you that I can vouch for your story. And in that photo on the left, that's you and I and America's Got Talent winner and your fellow headline books author, Landau Eugene Murphy Jr. Landau and I were in Shanghai, China. I don't know if I ever told you the story, but we landed at the airport, and they had a driver take us to the hotel. And the driver didn't speak a lick of English, but he tried very hard to communicate. And of course, being West Virginia boys, we only spoke hillbilly. So we were having a tough time communicating. And he leaned over as he's driving, and he says, so where are you from? And Landau says, well, we're from West Virginia. And this gentleman says, country road, take me home. It was an amazing, surreal moment to be 6,000 miles away and someone remember country roads. So
everywhere around the world. I mean, it's
amazing.
Just Senator Joe Manchin, told me a story once about when he was governor of West Virginia. And this is in the book. When he was governor of West Virginia, and he went to Thailand to meet with the Prime Minister of Thailand. And of course, they were brought together, and he was introduced, Prime Minister, this is Governor Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and Senator Manchin told me, he was a senator at the time, he told me, he said, the prime minister goes, almost heaven, West Virginia, you know. So it's just used. I mean, people always, and I don't know if you remember this, but a month later, we had just gone off the air on the morning show, and my phone rang with a really strange number on it. And I couldn't imagine, I mean, it was not like an American phone number. I had no idea what it was going to be. And I picked up the phone, and I do not talk about this in the book. I should have, but I picked up the phone and answered it. And this man, heavily accented, and I can't do accents at all, but he said, you know, I'm looking for Dreama Denver. And I said, well, you have found her. Who is this? And he said, this is whatever his name was, from the Netherlands. And I said, the Netherlands? And he said, yes. And I thought I was being punked. You know, I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. And he said, no, I want to talk to you about state song. And I said, okay, what do you, and I'm sure his English was better than I'm making it sound. But I said, okay, what do you want to know about the state song? And he said, well, I would like to bring a TV crew and come to Little Buddy Radio. And I'm like, what? From Amsterdam, which is where he told me he was. And he said, yes. And believe it or not, they had a show in Amsterdam every year called, I think it was called something like the Top 2000. And what they do is they let their listeners choose the top 2000 songs for the year or something like that. It was something very close to that. Country Roads was one of those songs in Amsterdam. They came to West Virginia, to my home. Little Buddy Radio is in the upstairs of my home. They came to my home with a TV crew, a producer, a director, a reporter, a cameraman. They were all there. They interviewed me, and I had Senator Bill Cole, who was president of the West Virginia Senate at the time. I had him here, Marty Gearhart, who co-authored the resolution when we went to him. And we had Amsterdam here in West Virginia doing a TV piece for a show called The Top 2000 in Amsterdam. I mean, that is pretty. Netherlands 3 was Neder with the D. Netherlands 3 was the TV station. I mean, that was pretty impressive. That was so exciting.
That's pretty cool. And
I wish you had been here for that. That would have been awesome. You would have loved it.
You're being backed up, by the way, by our viewers. Carolyn says at our request, it was sung in Paris, France in 1990. Lisa writes, she took a group of high school sophomores to London in the early 80s while visiting Piccadilly Square. Record store owner there discovered we were from West Virginia and played us a reggae version of Country Roads so we could hear true West Virginians sing the song. So it's just an everywhere kind of thing.
It is.
If you're just joining us and you're scrolling through on your social media feed, Dreama Denver is our guest tonight, and we're talking about her amazing book and her amazing life. The book is Gilligan's Dreams from Headline Books, and there's a photo up on the screen now of something that is very near and dear to your heart. You've done it for the last, decade or more now, and that is your always free honor flight where you honor American veterans. You take them to Washington, D.C. Tell me about that photo and what it means to you.
Wow, they all mean so much. And I write about this particular trip in the epilogue of my book. This will make me emotional. This was a very, very special trip. We had made, when we first started Honor Flight, I founded Always Free Honor Flight in 2011. We made our first trip in 2012. And in 2013, we had made our regularly scheduled trip to Washington in May. And in June, I got a call from the national office wanting to know if we could make another one. Now, people have to understand that, we live in a small state and a small population, and certainly the area I'm in is small. So raising money for the trip is always a challenge. And we had just made our trip. And but when they contacted me and they said, we have 4 veterans in Beckley, West Virginia. You can see the one who's sitting tallest was a Vietnam veteran. The other 3 were World War II veterans. and they wanted us to do a TLC trip. And I said, I don't know what that is. What is that? And they said TLC stood for Their Last Chance. These 4 men were living in hospice, and they had been given a finite amount of time to live. And their dying wish was to see the memorials built to honor their service. They had never seen them. They'd never been to Washington, and they had served this country. And so I said, absolutely, we will make another trip. So in July, about 4 weeks maybe after making our regular trip, we took these 4 veterans to DC. It was the most interesting trip ever, because these 4, we had a whole, we go by bus because we're so close to Washington. It's only about 5 hours. So we had a full bus, a 55-seater with 4 veterans, 4 nurses, 1 grandson of one of the World War II veterans, or maybe it was a son, I'm not sure. 3 Team Denver members, always free honor flight team members. So that's what, and a bus driver. So that's what, like 12 people. I didn't count, guys. You'll have to count it up, but I think it was like 12 people on the bus. When we got there, Senator Manchin, like he always does, even though there were only 4 veterans, he met us. Nick Rahal at the time met us, came and met our veterans. We did everything together. Generally, you know, Burke, you do these trips with us. When we make a trip, people split up. Like when you go to the World War II is a big memorial. People go see different parts of it. Then when you get to the Lincoln Memorial and the Vietnam Wall and the Korean Memorial, everybody goes in a different direction to see what it is they want to see. And this time there were so few of us, we just stayed together for the whole trip. And it was the most emotional. There are no words verbally to try to describe what honor flight is like. Is almost impossible for me. It is just the most emotional, amazing, gratifying thing that I have ever been part of. It is such a privilege to honor these men and women. It is such a, it's just such a privilege to do it. And I love, our veterans know that when I say how much I love them, I am not whistling Dixie. I love them so much. If I could do a trip a month to honor them, I would do that. We didn't get to make our trip this year because of COVID. And that would have been our 11th. We've made 10 trips now. And there is not anything I wouldn't do for our veterans. And I hope always that they know that. And I hope that they, you know, sign up for the next trip. We're certainly hoping we can do it in 2021. None of us know what's going to happen in the next year or so, but it is the honor of my life to be able to do it. And I could go on and on about it ad nauseum because I love it so much. But we are blessed, all of us on Team Denver. We are blessed. I know you feel blessed to be part of it.
It's as you said, it's incredibly gratifying, and those guys deserve all that and so much more. If you'd like to make a donation to Always Free Honor Flight in care of the Denver Foundation, you can do that at bobdenver.com. And as Dreama mentioned, there's a lot about Always Free Honor Flight in the epilogue of the new edition, the second edition of Gilligan's Dreams.
Right.
And so many, you know, thankful comments are flowing in from folks who support our veterans all over the country and support you for what you do. And I wonder if in this incredible life that you write about, if there are touchstones that stand out. Honor Flight, I'm sure, has to be one. That Making Country Roads a state song is one.
That was huge.
Touchstones that you remember from those years with Bob. If you think back on that 30 years, what stands out?
Just joy. So much joy. We just Hawaii, that would be a big standout for me. We loved Kauai and tried to spend, oh boy, were those the days, but we tried to spend as much time there as we could. And I loved every moment that we got to be there. I know that when Bob saw heaven, it looked exactly like Kauai. I'm convinced of that. Just everything we did together. We loved road trips, Bob and I did. And if we weren't working on stage between shows, we would get in the car and take off. And he would, back in those days, we didn't have GPS, and you had to actually use a map. And Bob would tell me, he would go, I was the navigator, and he would say, look, find the dotted line. We're going to go from here to here. Find the dotted lines. Well, you guys know that the dotted lines are like the dirt roads, or, the really off the beaten path roads. And we ended up in some places that just, a couple of places that practically scared the life out of me. I remember we were in Utah, and we were going this road, this back road. We were in a car, like a 1972 boat-sized car. And we get to this place, you can't turn around and go back. You've got to keep going forward. And it's I would call it like a shelf road. I mean, it was a drop on this side, and that's a little fear of mine. A drop on this side and a drop on this side. It's raining, it's mud. And Bob's, oh, we can get across it. We can get across it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm holding my breath. And, and we get about halfway, and it's long. We get about halfway across, and here comes a truck. And really, I thought I was going to probably have heart failure on the spot, but things like that. We just had adventures, and we just sort of flew by the seat of our pants. We weren't real organized. We could be when we had to be, but we were, stick a pin in the map and let's go there, wherever that is, and we were blessed that we had time to do that. Like, if we'd have maybe 3 or 4 weeks off between a show. So it wasn't like you had to cram it all into a couple of days, you could just stick the pin in the map and take off. And so just all of that, and just all the wonderful things we did together on stage, and how much fun it was. After the show, we'd come back to the apartment that we were in, or the hotel room if it was rehearsal, and we would talk about audience reaction and what we needed to try this time. And, tomorrow night we'd do it this way, and that got a great laugh, so let's do that again. And, just all of that was just wonderful fun. I'm so happy in retrospect, obviously, that we had those first 6 years, because even though, people might find them, they were kind of irresponsible years, where we didn't have any responsibility. And I remember at that time thinking, we didn't live anywhere. We didn't have a house. I never wanted a house. Bob couldn't believe me. He would go, oh, this is a nice place. You want to get a house here? No, I had no nesting instinct. I just wanted to stay on the road. And he loved that. And it was just, it was just joyful to have the adventures we had, because once we did settle down, once we had a baby, everything changed, everything. It was like the flip side of that coin. So when I look back all these years later, I'm very grateful that we had, those first 6 years before Colin, where we just played and had a good time.
It's a great story. It's a life well lived, and it's all in Gilligan's Dreams, the brand new 2nd edition. Get an autographed copy, heck, get an extra one and give it as a gift this holiday season at headlinebooks.com. What a great conversation, Dreama.
I should say one thing, though. I think the book is going to be available in January.
So it's available for pre-orders now.
We can double check with Kathy. Yes, but I think it's going to be in January, so maybe not for the holidays.
Get your pre-orders in now.
Four Bears, yes, it is there for pre-order. And 4 Bears in a Box, if you've got kids on your list, it is a really wonderful children's book. I'm so that little book has brought me so much joy. Little book, it's a wonderful book. And Ashley Belote, who, it is what it is because of Ashley and her talent and her imagination to bring my bears to life in a way that I just never imagined. And it's an award-winning book. It's won a few awards, which is just amazing. And so that is available for order. So you can get that at bobdenver.com, and I can autograph it for you and get it to you in time for Christmas. If you're an Amazon person and you like to do Prime, you can also get it at Amazon and headlinebooks.com. But the autographed ones will come from bobdenver.com.
Fair enough. Hope you had a good time tonight. I enjoyed it, and
Are
I
we
learned
finished?
things.
No, we're not finished.
I learned new things. See, that's what happens. Time flies when you're having fun.
No, really. We could talk all night, couldn't we? We could go on
Thank
for a
you.
while. I've enjoyed it so much, Burke. Thank you.
You bet. That's our friend Dreama Denver. Find out more about Dreama at headlinebooks.com and check out all their other authors, all part of the holiday extravaganza. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. I'm Burke Allen for Dreama Denver and the Headline Books family. Have a great evening. Bye, everybody.